Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands, and Britain sent a task force to the South Atlantic to get them back. One of the men who fought in the Falklands War was Tony Banks, a member of the 2nd Battalion of the Parachute Regiment. Now he's written a memoir, Storming the Falklands, My War and After. When the conflict ended, he left the army and founded a very successful care home business in Scotland. Today, he's a millionaire. But like many veterans, he also suffers the psychological after effects of conflict. When he took part in Channel 4's Secret Millionaire, one of the charities he chose to support was Combat Stress, which helps victims of post-traumatic stress disorder. We came here to the Royal Engineers Museum at Chatham in Kent, where they have a Harrier jump jet that took part in the Falklands conflict, to meet the author. Tony Banks, what sort of young man were you when you went to the Falklands?
I was a naive young man, I think, when I went to the Falklands. I was a fighting fit soldier. I was enjoying my life in the army. I was somebody who thought he'd trained for a job that he would never do. And I was a fun-loving young buck, basically.
And then you found yourself doing that job, and it was a pretty tough job, wasn't it? It was an old-fashioned war. There were infantry battles, close-quarter fighting, and you saw some terrible things.
Absolutely. I mean, we fixed bayonets. I mean, nobody had fixed bayonets since the Second World War. I'd always believed in the training that I'd been given in the Parachute Regiment. I believed, you know, it was an elite regiment. We were a brand in its on our own right. And I always believed that we would come out successfully in anything that we did. However, I was unprepared for the brutality of war, of losing comrades, of seeing death and destruction and despair.
I get the impression that the most terrible things you saw were at Bluff Cove and Fitzroy when the Sir Galahad was bombed by Argentinian planes.
We'd always been prepared for things like bullet wounds and blast injuries, but what we weren't prepared for was burns, and horrific burns. I mean, real severe burns. Men screaming in absolute agony, skin dripping often like melted candle wax. The smell, that was something that will stay with me for the rest of my days.
You came back from the Falklands, and like everybody who fought there and saw the things you saw, you were affected. A lot of guys went completely off the rails. They cracked up totally. You, on the other hand, didn't. You went on to be very successful. You built a large and very successful business. Why didn't you go the way of some others?
I could lock it away and forget it, where I think there are some individuals who unfortunately cannot do that. And it then becomes a downward spiral where it's constantly on their mind, and then it manifests itself in alcoholism, criminality, drugs.
Now, spool forward more than 25 years, you get a phone call and you're asked to take part in Channel 4's Secret Millionaire. They take you off to Anfield in Liverpool, terrible dereliction and deprivation. One of the people you meet there is a young man called Lee, who, like you, is an ex-veteran. And Lee was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, like a lot of veterans.
Does it bring back some memories to you? It's okay, mate.
His story seems to unlock something in you. Is that fair? Would you say you were suffering from PTSD as well?
When I started to look back, I thought, I must have been suffering from some form of PTSD, because my behaviours were manifesting themselves that I had some problem. And I thought, yes, I must have been. And I thought, and I wasn't the only one. I knew plenty of guys that were going through the same thing. But we didn't recognise it for being post-traumatic stress disorder, you know. And that's when I thought, this problem needs to be tackled. It needs to get into the public arena. And people have to understand that a physical injury, as sad and as bad as it is, we can see it, it's very visible. But what's going on in people's minds, we cannot see. But it's a huge problem. What we need to do, though, is be able to recognise that and help them rehabilitate, and not see it as a black mark against that individual because they're having these emotions and these feelings. They should be able to bring it out and talk about it, and it should not affect their careers.
Now, two things followed on from Secret Millionaire. One was that you decided to return a Falklands memento that you acquired on the islands. Now, what was it and why did you do that?
One of the war trophies that I liberated from the Falklands was a trumpet. This trumpet had a music book with it, and the music book actually had the guy's name. So this trumpet became personal. It was, to me, this was a man's trumpet. This was not an Argentine military item. This was a man's trumpet. And I went on a quest to find this chap and give him his trumpet back.
And I think this is yours.
Now, you found him, and you gave him the trumpet back, and the BBC was there and filmed it. It looked a rather formal occasion.
I think half of Argentina was in this little house. He had his whole family, you know, and everybody was there. And then I realised this was a huge, huge issue to this man. And what happened from there was that coincidentally, this man had suffered from PTSD. But the most emotional moment for me was when his wife and his mother came and gave me the biggest hug that I've probably ever had out of two women in my life, because they realised this was the final piece in the jigsaw for this man finding peace.
And then you also went back to the Falklands with the Secret Millionaire team, and you went with a couple of former comrades. What surprised me about that was how positive you were looking back about the Falklands War and your part in it.
The only way I can describe that return to the Falklands, and I'm not a religious man, but it was like finding God. It was like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. It then dawned on me, what a fantastic job we actually did. And you know, I'm amazed that we actually completed the task down there because of the terrain, the logistics, you know, and it can only be down to one thing. And I just think it was down to sheer hard graft, determination, attitude, and the brand that is the Parachute Regiment. The personalities that I met in the Falklands and realised what they'd suffered. They had, you know, one chap said to me, you know, you'll never know what it feels like to be liberated. And that brought it home to me. You know, since 1066, I don't think we've been invaded, you know. So, and when I was come to a conclusion about why did all these young men die, was it worth it? This was all putting the little bits of the jigsaw together. Was it worth it? And you think, yeah, it was worth it. And I would do it again. And I would do it again. Because I believe in it so much.
Tony Banks, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Nick.